I spent 6 hours carrying boxes up 3 flights of stairs for people who think I'm a pathetic loser. The thing is, I knew they thought that. I've known for years. I just finally got the proof. I need to back up because this is going to sound insane, but stay with me. My family has always treated me like I was the practice kid, the rough draft. Jade is my sister, she's 31, and according to my parents Wallace and Anna, she's basically perfection wrapped in success. Got her MBA, married Reed who works in medical device sales, bought a house in the suburbs, does hot yoga, has the right friends. You know the type. Meanwhile, I'm 34, working as a technical writer, renting a one-bedroom apartment, and apparently the walking embodiment of disappointment. It wasn't always this obvious. When we were kids, it was subtle stuff. Jade got the bigger birthday parties. Her achievements got framed on the wall while mine got a pat on the head. When I graduated college, Mom and Dad came to the ceremony, but left right after to help Jade move into her new apartment. When Jade got engaged, they threw her this massive party and invited like 80 people. When I got promoted last year, my mom said, "That's nice," and changed the subject to Jade's kitchen renovation. The money thing started about 2 years ago. I had some unexpected expenses, car trouble, and my landlord raised rent at the same time, and I asked my parents if I could borrow $300. Just borrow. I would have paid it back in a month. My mom Anna actually laughed and told me I should get a second job or learn to budget better. This from a woman who gave Jade $15,000 for a down payment on her house as a wedding gift. But sure, I'm the financially irresponsible one. So yeah, I've been angry for a while. Not the sad, mopey kind of angry. The cold, calculating kind. I started keeping notes about 3 years ago. Every comment, every dismissal, every time they celebrated Jade's mediocre accomplishments while ignoring my actual achievements. I got a certification in technical documentation that increased my salary by $12,000, and my dad Wallace said that's good, and went back to talking about Reed's new car. I stopped expecting anything from them, but I also stopped pretending I didn't notice. When Jade texted me 4 weeks ago asking if I could help her move into her new house, I almost said no. But then I thought about it. They always do this. They need me for the grunt work, for the free labor, for the favor that won't cost them anything, and I always show up because some stupid part of me keeps hoping they'll see me differently. But this time, I had a different plan. I showed up Saturday morning at 8 like she asked. The moving truck was already there. Reed was directing the professional movers with the furniture, but apparently I was the free option for all the boxes of kitchen stuff and decorations and whatever else. My Uncle Jet was there too, Wallace's brother, standing around drinking coffee and not helping. He's always been one of those guys who thinks he's hilarious, makes jokes at everyone else's expense and gets offended if you don't laugh. I spent the morning hauling boxes. Nobody said thank you. Nobody offered me water. Jade kept giving me instructions like I was the help she didn't have to pay. Take this upstairs. That goes in the basement. Be careful with that. The professional movers got treated better than I did. Around noon, I brought up another load of boxes to the master bedroom, and when I came back downstairs, I heard voices out on the back deck. The deck doors were open. I was in the kitchen. They couldn't see me, but I could hear every word perfectly clear. Jade said something about me being slow with the boxes, and then she said, "God, he's so pathetic. 34 and still desperate for our approval like a lost puppy." Just said it casual, like she was commenting on the weather. My mom, Anna, was out there. She laughed. Actually, laughed. Then she said he asked me for $300 last month. I told him to get a second job instead. Said it like it was funny. Like me struggling was a punchline. My dad, Wallace, made this scoffing sound. He said, "Worst investment I ever made. 30 years of disappointment." His exact words. I'm his son, and he called me an investment that didn't pay off. Reed jumped in. He said he actually thinks we want him here. What a sad little man. Called me a sad little man. This guy who married into the family 2 years ago and acts like he has the right to judge me. Jade wasn't done. She said he'd do anything for our table scraps. Watch me give him the stale bagels later. They had bagels from some bakery in the kitchen, and apparently the plan was to give me the old ones as a joke. She was going to give me garbage food and laugh about it. Anna said at least the loser's good for free moving services. Called me a loser, my own mother. Then Jet really went for it. He said bet he dreams will leave him something in the will. Delusional fool. Everyone burst out laughing. All of them. My parents, my sister, her husband, my uncle. Laughing at the idea that I'm so pathetic, I sit around hoping they'll die and leave me something. I stood there in that kitchen with a box of Jade's stupid decorative plates in my hands, and I didn't feel hurt. I didn't feel sad. I felt vindicated. Because my phone was in my front pocket and I'd started recording the second I heard voices on the deck. See, I learned something about myself these past few years. I'm patient. I can wait. I'd been waiting for them to show their true selves in a way I could prove. All those years of subtle dismissals and quiet cruelty, I knew it was there, but I couldn't point to anything concrete. People would say, oh, that's just family dynamics. You're being too sensitive. I'm sure they love you. But now I had proof. 7 minutes and 43 seconds of audio proof. I finished carrying boxes. I smiled. I was pleasant. When Jade offered me those stale bagels, I took them and said thank you. Reed asked if I could take one more load down to the basement, and I said, sure, no problem. I stayed until 4 in the afternoon, making sure every single box was exactly where they wanted it. When I left, Jade said thanks for helping, and I said anytime. I'm happy I could be here for you. She actually looked surprised that I was being so nice. My mom gave me a half hug and said, we appreciate you. My dad shook my hand. Uncle Jet clapped me on the shoulder and made some joke about me earning my keep. I got in my car and I sat there for a minute. Then I opened my phone and listened to the recording one more time just to make sure it was clear. It was perfect. Every word, every laugh, all of them. I'd been preparing for something like this for 2 years. Not this exactly, but some moment where I'd have leverage. I'd been building a list of people who needed to hear the truth about my family. Extended family members who thought we were all so close. Family friends who'd known me since I was a kid. People from my mom's book club and my dad's gym, and Jade's professional network who all believed the story that our family was tight-knit and supportive. I didn't post it publicly. That would have been too simple and too easy to dismiss. Instead, I sent it directly to 17 specific people. My mom's sister, Milana, who always tells everyone how proud Anna must be of both her kids. My dad's business partner, who thinks Wallace is this great family man. 3 of Jade's colleagues from her MBA program, who she's always trying to impress. Reed's parents, who just love how welcoming our family has been. Some cousins, some old family friends, people whose opinions actually mattered to them. I wrote a simple message with it. This is what my family really thinks of me. I thought you should know who they actually are. Then I sent it to all 17 people at the same time. That was Saturday at 4:30 in the afternoon. By 7 p.m., my phone started blowing up, but I'd already turned off notifications from all of them. Jade tried calling 6 times. Anna tried calling. Wallace sent a text that just said, call me now. I deleted them without reading past the first line. I wasn't ready to talk to them yet. I wanted them to sit with it. I wanted them to panic. Sunday morning, I woke up to 43 missed calls and God knows how many texts. I made coffee and read through some of them. Jade was having a complete meltdown. The text started with, where did you get that and do you know what you've done? And then devolved into calling me crazy and saying I took things out of context and I was ruining her life over nothing. My mom's texts were trying to be diplomatic at first, saying, we need to talk about this like adults, but then turned angry when I didn't respond. My dad just kept calling. The thing is, I did exactly what I planned to do. I exposed them. And the fallout was immediate because it turns out when you spend years building a reputation as the perfect family, having audio proof that you're actually cruel destroys that reputation pretty effectively. Aunt Milana called my mom and apparently tore into her about how she treated me. Reed's parents heard their son call me a sad little man and were horrified. Jade's colleagues from her MBA program started questioning what kind of person she really was. But I wasn't done. See, I'd been planning this for longer than just the recording. I'd been working on something bigger for months, and the recording was just the first move. Sunday night, my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. I answered it, and it was Reed. He was calling from someone else's phone because I'd blocked his number months ago in preparation for this. He was trying to sound calm, but I could hear the panic underneath. He said we all needed to sit down and talk, that this was getting out of hand, that families fight, but we work through it. I told him I don't consider them my family anymore, and hung up. Monday morning, I went to work like normal. I didn't check my phone. I didn't respond to anyone. I knew they were spiraling, and that was exactly what I wanted. Monday night around 10 p.m., someone started pounding on my apartment door. I looked through the peephole, and it was Jade, Reed, and my mom. All 3 of them. They were yelling through the door about how I needed to fix this, how I was destroying everything. How could I do this to family? I sat on my couch and turned up the TV volume. They pounded for 20 minutes before the neighbor came out and told them to leave, or he was calling the cops. They left. That's when I knew the second phase was working. Because I hadn't just sent the recording to embarrass them. I'd sent it to specific people for specific reasons. People who had connections they needed. People who had influence in their social circles. People whose opinions would spread to others. And now those people were pulling away from them. Aunt Milana wasn't just mad at my mom. She was telling other family members what she heard. Reed's parents weren't just disappointed. They were questioning if their son had married into the right family. Jade's professional network wasn't just gossiping. They were reconsidering whether they wanted to maintain ties with someone who treated family that way. I'd weaponized their own cruelty against them, and I'd done it in a way they couldn't undo. They couldn't claim I was lying because it was their own voices. They couldn't say I was exaggerating because 17 other people heard the same thing I did. They couldn't dismiss it because these weren't random internet strangers. These were people whose opinions they actually cared about. And the best part? I was just getting started. Update 1. Okay, so I need to address some comments from the last post. Yes, I know how this sounds. Yes, I know some of you think I should have just cut them off and moved on. And to the person who said I'm being petty, you clearly didn't read the part where my own mother called me a loser while laughing about it. This isn't petty. This is consequences. Also, shout out to the commenter who said they probably have no idea what's actually coming. You're absolutely right. The recording was just the opening move. So Tuesday morning, I woke up and decided it was time to actually answer their calls. Not because I felt bad or wanted to reconcile or any of that nonsense, because I wanted them to understand exactly how much trouble they were in, and I wanted to hear them try to explain themselves. I'd been waiting years for this, and I wasn't going to rush it. I called my mom first. She answered on the first ring, started talking immediately about how we needed to discuss this situation, how the recording was taken out of context, how I was blowing things out of proportion. I let her talk for maybe 30 seconds, and then I cut her off. I told her there was no context that made what she said acceptable. She tried to tell me that's just how they talk sometimes. They didn't mean it seriously. It was just venting. Just venting. Like calling your son a loser who's good for free labor is the same as complaining about traffic. I asked her if she remembered refusing to lend me $300. She got quiet. Then she said that was different. They were trying to teach me financial responsibility. I pointed out that she gave Jade $15,000 for a house down payment. She said that was a gift for a wedding and completely different. I asked her how it was different. She couldn't answer. She just kept saying I was twisting things. Then she tried a different approach. She said families say things they don't mean when they're stressed or tired. That everyone talks about their relatives sometimes and it doesn't mean they don't love them. I told her there's a difference between venting and coordinated mockery. She didn't have a response to that. I asked her if she'd talked to Aunt Milana recently. That made her start crying. Apparently, Milana had called her Sunday night and absolutely destroyed her. Told her she was ashamed to be related to her. Said she couldn't believe Anna had treated her own son that way for years and thought it was funny. My mom was trying to explain to me how hurt she was by Milana's reaction, and I actually laughed. She got offended that I was laughing, and I told her welcome to how I've felt for the past decade. She started begging me to send a follow-up message to everyone explaining it was a misunderstanding, that we'd talked and worked things out, that the recording didn't represent how our family really was. I told her no. She asked what it would take for me to fix this. I said there was nothing to fix because I hadn't broken anything. She said I was destroying the family, and I told her the family destroyed itself years ago. I just made sure other people knew about it. The call ended with her sobbing and me feeling absolutely nothing. That probably makes me sound cold, but honestly, after 34 years of being treated like I'm not worth their time or money or basic respect, I'm fresh out of sympathy. Next, I called Jade. She answered and immediately started screaming at me about how I'd ruined her life, how 2 of her colleagues from her MBA program had reached out asking if what they heard was really how she talked about family, how Reed's parents were questioning everything, how her friend group was treating her differently. How could I do this to her over one stupid conversation? One stupid conversation, that's what she called it. I let her rant for probably 5 minutes. When she finally stopped to breathe, I asked her how long she'd been talking about me like that. She said she didn't know what I meant. I told her that conversation on the deck wasn't spontaneous. The way everyone jumped in, the way they all had their own jokes ready, that was practiced. That was a familiar dynamic, so how many years had they been mocking me behind my back? She got defensive. Said they didn't mock me. They just made observations sometimes. I asked if calling someone pathetic and desperate was an observation. She said I was being dramatic. I pointed out that I had the recording and could play it back if she needed a reminder. She went quiet. Then she tried to turn it around on me. Said I'd always been sensitive and couldn't take a joke. That I'd always played the victim. That maybe if I'd been more successful or made better choices, they wouldn't have had things to criticize. And there it was. The real reason I wasn't successful enough. I wasn't impressive enough. I didn't make enough money or have the right career or live in the right neighborhood. So I deserved to be mocked. I asked her what she thought success looked like. She said she wasn't getting into this with me. I pushed. Asked her if she thought her MBA and her house and her hot yoga made her better than me. She said it wasn't about being better, it was about having ambition and drive. I told her I had plenty of ambition, it just wasn't focused on impressing people who treated me like trash. She said I was twisting her words. I said her words were recorded and 17 people heard them exactly as she said them. She started crying then. Told me I had no idea what I'd done to her reputation. That people were looking at her differently now. that she'd worked so hard to build her professional network and I'd destroyed it in one day. I told her she destroyed it herself the second she decided to call me pathetic. The conversation went in circles for another 10 minutes. She kept trying to minimize what she'd said, kept insisting it wasn't that bad, kept telling me I was overreacting. Finally, I told her we were done talking and hung up. My dad called me Tuesday afternoon. He took a different approach, went straight to anger, told me I was acting like a child and needed to fix what I'd broken immediately, said I'd embarrassed the entire family and made us all look bad. I asked him if he remembered calling me his worst investment. He said he didn't mean it that way. I asked what other way there was to mean calling your son a disappointment for 30 years. He told me I'd had plenty of opportunities in life and hadn't taken advantage of them, that he and my mom had given me everything growing up and I'd squandered it. I asked him what exactly I'd squandered. He said potential. I asked him to be specific. He couldn't, just kept saying I hadn't lived up to what I could have been. I told him I made a decent living and supported myself and had a career I was good at. He said it wasn't about money. It was about ambition and pride. I asked if he was proud of Jade. He said of course he was. I asked what she'd accomplished that I hadn't. He listed off her MBA and her house and her marriage. I pointed out I had a certification in technical documentation, had been promoted twice, and chose to live alone because I didn't need external validation. He said that wasn't the same thing. That's when I realized there was literally nothing I could have done that would have made them see me differently. It wasn't about achievement. It was about me not fitting their image of what success looked like. Jade checked all their boxes. House, spouse, status symbols. I didn't. So nothing I accomplished would ever matter to them. I told my dad that and he got quiet. Then he said I was being unfair and looking at everything through a negative lens. I asked him how else I was supposed to look at being called a disappointment while hauling boxes for free. He said they appreciated my help. I laughed, told him appreciation and mockery weren't the same thing. He changed tactics, asked what I wanted from them. I said nothing. He said everyone wants something. I told him I'd wanted basic respect for about 30 years and never got it. So now I was done wanting anything from them. He said families work through problems. I said families don't spend years treating one member like hired help and then laugh about it. The call ended with him telling me I was making a huge mistake and would regret burning these bridges. I told him the bridges burned themselves. Wednesday, things escalated in a way I'd been planning for, but they clearly hadn't expected. See, when I sent that recording to 17 people, I wasn't random about who I chose. Every single person had a specific role in my family's social ecosystem, and I'd been cultivating relationships with some of them for the past year specifically for this purpose. Aunt Milana wasn't just my mom's sister. She was the family matriarch, the person everyone looked to for approval. When she turned on my mom, it gave permission for other family members to express doubts they'd probably had for years. By Wednesday afternoon, my mom had been uninvited from a family gathering next month, just uninvited. Milana told her she needed time to process what she'd learned about Anna's character. Reed's parents weren't just disappointed in him. They were starting to question everything about his judgment. His mom called him Wednesday morning and told him she was horrified that he'd participate in mocking me like that she didn't raise him to be cruel. Reed tried to explain it was just family dynamics, and she told him that wasn't an excuse. His dad apparently stopped by their house that evening unannounced to talk to both him and Jade about respect and character. But here's where it got interesting. 3 of Jade's MBA colleagues weren't just gossiping. They were actively pulling back from professional connections with her. One of them was supposed to introduce her to a potential client for some consulting work she was trying to start on the side. That introduction got canceled. Another had recommended Jade for a committee position in their professional organization. That recommendation got quietly withdrawn. The third just stopped responding to her messages entirely. Jade called me Wednesday night absolutely losing it, told me I was destroying her career over one conversation, that I was being vindictive and cruel, that she needed me to send a retraction to everyone. I asked her what she thought a retraction would say. She said I could tell them I misunderstood what I heard or that we'd worked things out. I told her I wasn't going to lie. She said I'd lied by making it seem worse than it was. I said I literally just sent them exactly what was said with zero commentary. The worst thing I did was tell the truth. She started crying again. Said she couldn't believe I hated her this much. I told her I didn't hate her. I just didn't respect her anymore. She asked what the difference was. I said hate requires caring, and I was all out of that particular emotion when it came to her. Then she said something that actually made me pause. She asked if I was really going to destroy everything over words. Just words. Like the years of dismissal and mockery and financial rejection were nothing because they were just words. I told her words from family cut deeper than anything else. She said I was being overly dramatic. I asked her how her reputation felt now that words were affecting it. She hung up on me. Thursday morning, I woke up to find out they'd tried a new approach. My mom had sent a long message to Aunt Milana, trying to explain the context of that conversation, saying they'd been stressed from the move, that they were venting about normal family frustrations, that every family has private moments where they say things they don't mean, that I'd taken advantage of a vulnerable moment to hurt them. Milana screenshotted the message and sent it to me asking if this was true. I called her, told her the whole story of the past few years. The money they'd given Jade versus refusing to lend me $300. The way they celebrated her achievements while dismissing mine. The pattern of using me for free labor while treating me like I was lucky to be included. The years of feeling like the backup child, Milana cried. Said she'd had no idea. That she'd always thought I was just more private or independent. That she'd noticed some dynamics but assumed it was normal sibling difference treatment. I told her it went way beyond that. She asked why I'd never said anything before. I told her I'd tried over the years and always got shut down or told I was being sensitive. She said she believed me and was sorry she hadn't seen it sooner. Then she asked what I wanted to happen now. I told her the truth. I wanted them to understand what they'd done. I wanted them to face consequences for years of cruelty. I wanted everyone who thought we were this perfect family to know what they were really like. She said she understood, but asked if I'd thought about what this would do to extended family relationships. If I was prepared for the fractures this would cause. I told her the family was already fractured. I just made it visible. By Thursday afternoon, my parents and Jade had apparently formed a unified strategy. They decided to come to my apartment building and demand a face-to-face conversation. Reed's idea, probably. He's the type who thinks everything can be solved with a sit-down meeting. I got a text from my building manager at 6 p.m. saying 3 people were in the lobby, asking to be let up to my apartment. He wanted to know if I was expecting visitors. I told him no, and to not let them up. He said they were insisting it was a family emergency. I told him there was no emergency and they weren't welcome. 20 minutes later, all 3 of them were outside my building on the sidewalk. I know because my neighbor Connor texted me that there were people outside yelling my name. I looked out my window, and there they were. My mom, my dad, and Jade, standing on the sidewalk at 6:30 on a Thursday evening causing a scene. I didn't go down. I just watched from my window. My dad was trying to call me. My mom was crying. Jade was pacing. They stood there for 45 minutes before finally leaving. My building manager called me after they left and asked if everything was okay. I told him everything was fine and apologized for the disruption. He said if they came back, he'd call the police for trespassing. That's when I knew they were getting desperate. And desperate people make mistakes. What they didn't know was that I'd been setting up something much bigger than just the recording. Something I'd been working on for 6 months. Something that would hit them in the one place they actually cared about. Their money. Update 2. Before I get into what happened next, I need to respond to some comments. To the people saying I should just let it go and move on. Did you miss the part where they spent years treating me like garbage? This isn't about one conversation. The recording was just the proof of what they'd been doing all along. And to whoever said I'm enjoying this too much, yeah, I am. I spent 34 years being their punching bag and I'm done apologizing for defending myself. Also, the person who asked what my endgame was, stick around, you're about to find out. So Friday morning, I woke up to a message from my cousin Annabelle. She's Aunt Milana's daughter, and I've always gotten along with her even though we weren't super close. She said she'd heard about everything and wanted to meet up to talk. I was suspicious because everyone in my family was trying to get to me through other people at that point, but Annabelle had never been one to get involved in drama, so I agreed. We met at a diner near my apartment Friday afternoon. She ordered coffee and got straight to the point. Asked me if what she'd heard about the recording was true. I told her yes and offered to let her listen to it. She said she'd already heard it, Milana had played it for her. Then she said something that surprised me. She told me she'd always suspected my parents treated me differently, but never knew how bad it was. Turns out Annabelle had noticed things over the years at family gatherings. The way my parents lit up when talking about Jade but gave short answers about me. The way they'd make excuses when she asked about my life. The way Jade got invited to more events. She said she'd mentioned it to her mom once years ago, but Milana had brushed it off as typical sibling dynamics. I asked her why she was telling me this. She said because she wanted me to know someone believed me and had seen it too, that I wasn't crazy or oversensitive like my parents were probably claiming. Then she asked what I was planning to do next. I told her I was going to make sure everyone understood exactly who my family really was, that the recording was just the beginning. She asked if I was prepared for how ugly this was going to get. I told her it had already been ugly for years. I was just making it visible. She said she understood, but wanted to warn me that my mom was planning something. Apparently, Anna had been calling different family members trying to organize some kind of intervention. She was telling people I was having a breakdown and needed help, that I'd always struggled with feeling like I didn't measure up, and this was me lashing out in an unhealthy way. She was trying to reframe the whole thing as me having mental health issues. I actually laughed when Annabelle told me that. Of course, that was their strategy. Can't defend the indefensible, so just claim I'm unstable. I asked Annabelle if people were believing it. She said some were receptive because they wanted to believe it. Nobody wants to think people they've known for years are cruel, so if there's an explanation that lets them off the hook, they'll take it. But Annabelle said Milana wasn't buying it and neither were several other family members. The recording was too clear. My mom could claim I was unstable all she wanted, but that didn't change what everyone heard. I thanked Annabelle for the heads up, and she said she'd keep me posted if she heard anything else. That afternoon, my phone rang from another unknown number. I answered, and it was Reed's mom. She introduced herself even though we'd met several times and apologized for bothering me. Then she said she needed to say something and asked if I had a few minutes to talk. She told me she was mortified by what Reed had said on that recording, that she and her husband had raised him better than that they'd had several long conversations with him about respect and kindness, and he kept trying to tell them it was just guy talk or family banter. She wasn't accepting that explanation. I told her I appreciated her calling, but she didn't owe me an apology for her adult son's behavior. She said she knew that, but she wanted me to understand that his words didn't represent their family's values. Then she said something that made me realize my plan was working even better than I'd thought. She told me that she and Reed's dad were questioning whether Jade was a good influence on their son, that they'd always thought she was ambitious and successful, but now they were wondering if she was actually just status-obsessed and shallow, that Reed had never been cruel before he married her, and they were concerned about how she'd changed him. I didn't correct her assumption that Jade had corrupted Reed. Honestly, I think Reed was always capable of that kind of cruelty. He just finally found people who rewarded it. But if his parents wanted to blame Jade, that worked in my favor. I told her that I'd noticed changes in Reed after the wedding too. She asked what kind of changes. I mentioned how he'd started making subtle digs at me during family gatherings, how he'd joined in when my parents dismissed my accomplishments, how he seemed to enjoy having someone beneath him in the family hierarchy. Reed's mom got quiet. Then she said she and her husband needed to have some serious conversations with their son about his character. I thanked her for calling, and we hung up. That evening, I got a series of texts from Jade that were completely unhinged. She was blaming me for her marriage problems now. Said Reed's parents were driving a wedge between them, and it was my fault. That they'd had a huge fight about the recording, and Reed was taking his parents' side. That I was destroying her life and her relationship, and for what? So I could feel like I'd won some imaginary competition? I didn't respond immediately. Let her stew. A few hours later, she sent another message saying we needed to talk in person, that this had gone too far and we needed to figure out how to fix it. I told her there was nothing to fix. She said there was everything to fix. I said the only thing broken was what they'd done to me, and that wasn't my responsibility to repair. She tried calling me. I declined. She texted saying she'd drive to my apartment if I didn't agree to meet her somewhere. I told her if she showed up at my building again, I'd call the police. She said I was being ridiculous and she just wanted to talk face to face like adults. I said adults don't spend years mocking their siblings and then demand FaceTime when there are consequences. Saturday morning, my dad tried a different approach. He sent me a long text saying he'd been thinking about everything, wanted to acknowledge that maybe they hadn't always treated me fairly, that parenting is hard and sometimes you make mistakes, that he could see how I might have interpreted some things as favoritism, even if that wasn't the intent. It was the most manipulative non-apology I've ever read. He wasn't actually admitting to anything specific, just vague acknowledgement that I might have felt badly and maybe they could have done better. No ownership of the cruelty, no recognition of the pattern, just enough to sound reasonable while actually saying nothing. I texted back asking him to specify what mistakes he was referring to. He said he didn't want to get into details over text. I told him to list 3 specific things he regretted doing. He didn't respond for 2 hours. When he finally replied, he said he regretted not spending more one-on-one time with me growing up, that he regretted not being more encouraging of my career path, that he regretted not recognizing how sensitive I was about comparisons to Jade. Not a single acknowledgement of the actual problems. Not the money, not the mockery, not calling me his worst investment. Just generic dad regrets that made it sound like I was an oversensitive kid who needed more attention. I told him that wasn't good enough. He asked what I wanted him to say. I told him I wanted him to admit that he and mom had treated me as less important than Jade for my entire life, that they'd used me for free labor while refusing to help me when I needed it, that they'd mocked me behind my back for years. He said I was exaggerating and seeing malice where there was just normal family dynamics. Normal family dynamics. That phrase again. Like there was a universe where what they'd done was normal. I told him we were done talking. He said I was being stubborn and refusing to meet him halfway. I said halfway from cruelty was still unacceptable. He stopped responding after that. Sunday was when things really escalated. My mom had apparently organized that intervention Annabelle warned me about. She'd invited Aunt Milana, two other relatives, and a few family friends to their house Sunday afternoon to discuss the situation with me. Except she didn't actually invite me. She just told everyone I was in crisis and they needed to figure out how to help. Milana called me Sunday morning to warn me this was happening. She said she was going to attend, but only so she could push back on my mom's narrative. She asked if I wanted her to say anything specific. I told her to just tell the truth about what she'd heard and what I'd told her about the pattern of behavior. After the meeting, Milana called me back. She said it had been one of the most uncomfortable afternoons of her life. My mom had opened by saying she was worried about me and thought I was having some kind of mental health crisis. That I'd always struggled with feelings of inadequacy and this recording situation was me acting out. Milana said she'd interrupted immediately, told everyone that she'd listened to the recording multiple times and talked to me at length about the history. That this wasn't a mental health crisis, this was consequences for documented cruelty. My mom had tried to argue that the recording was taken out of context, and everyone says things they don't mean sometimes. One of the family friends apparently agreed with my mom, said that families are complicated, and maybe everyone needed to take a step back and cool down. Another relative said they thought I was overreacting, and this could all be solved with a good conversation and some apologies. But Milana held firm. She told them that she'd heard the recording and there was no context that made it acceptable, that she'd learned about years of differential treatment and financial rejection, that this wasn't about one bad day, it was about a pattern. My mom started crying, said she couldn't believe her own sister was taking my side against her. Milana told her there weren't sides, there was just accountability. My mom said I was tearing the family apart. Milana said the family tore itself apart when they decided to treat one child as inferior. The meeting apparently ended with nothing resolved and several people angry at each other. My mom called me an hour later crying and asking how I could do this to her, how I could turn her own sister against her, how I could destroy her relationships with people who'd been her friends for decades. I told her she'd done that herself and hung up. That night around 11 p.m., I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was Reed. He'd gotten yet another new number to get around my blocks. He said we needed to talk man-to-man about what was happening, that this was affecting his marriage and his relationship with his parents and I needed to back off. I told him he participated in mocking me, and now he was facing consequences. He said he was just going along with family dynamics and didn't think I'd be upset by it. I asked him if he'd want someone to call him a sad little man. He said that was different. I asked how. He said because I was the one who seemed to need validation from them, not him. That response told me everything. He genuinely believed I was beneath him, that wanting respect from my family was weakness, that their treatment of me was justified because I cared about it. I told him he was exactly the kind of person he appeared to be on that recording and blocked the new number. Monday morning, I went to the bank. See, here's what I'd been working on for 6 months that I mentioned before. It wasn't about stealing their money or anything illegal. It was about leverage I'd been building without them knowing. 2 years ago, my parents had asked me to co-sign on a personal loan for them. They wanted to do some renovations on their house, but didn't want to tap their retirement accounts. They asked me because I had good credit and a stable job. They promised it wouldn't affect me at all. They'd make all the payments. It was just a formality. I'd said yes because at the time I still thought maybe doing them favors would make them see me differently. The loan was for $38,000. They'd been making the minimum payments for 2 years. What they didn't know was that 6 months ago, I'd started documenting every payment, every late fee when they missed the payment date, every time I'd had to reach out to remind them. I'd also pulled my credit report and saved copies showing how their loan was affecting my credit utilization and my ability to qualify for my own financing. I wasn't going to do anything illegal. I was going to call in the legitimate debt they owed me, because I'd been documenting everything and had copies of the cosign agreement, and I knew something they'd forgotten. The agreement had a clause that if they missed 3 payments or if I felt my credit was being adversely affected, I could demand immediate repayment of the full balance. They'd missed 4 payments over the past 2 years that they'd caught up on late. Their next payment was due in 3 days. And I'd already drafted the formal demand letter I was going to send requiring full repayment within 30 days. $38,000. Due in 30 days. Or I'd file to collect and it would destroy their credit. I stood in that bank Monday morning with the demand letter ready to be sent certified mail. And I smiled for the first time in weeks. They wanted to know what it felt like to be desperate. They were about to find out. Final update. Okay, so this is it. The conclusion to this absolute mess. And for everyone who's been following along and cheering me on, thank you. You've made this process so much better knowing people actually understood what I was doing. I sent the demand letter Tuesday morning via certified mail. $38,000 due within 30 days, or I'd initiate collection proceedings. The letter was completely legal and well within my rights according to the co-sign agreement they'd signed. I included copies of all the documentation, every missed payment, every late fee, every time it had affected my credit score. My parents received the letter Wednesday afternoon. I know because my dad called me from his cell, his work phone, my mom's phone, and two other numbers I didn't recognize within the span of 20 minutes. I didn't answer any of them. Let them panic. Let them feel what it was like to desperately need something and have it ignored. Wednesday evening, my mom left me a voicemail. She was crying and her voice kept breaking. She said they couldn't come up with that kind of money in 30 days, that it would wipe out their savings, that they'd have to take money from retirement accounts and pay penalties, that I was destroying them financially over a family disagreement. A family disagreement. That's what she called years of cruelty and mockery. I listened to the voicemail twice, felt nothing, deleted it. Thursday morning, I got a text from Jade saying my parents had called her, sobbing about the loan demand, that they were in a complete panic about where they'd get the money, that this was going too far, that I was financially ruining them over hurt feelings. I texted back reminding her that they'd refused to lend me $300 while giving her $15,000. She said that was completely different and I was being vindictive. I said I was being exactly as generous as they'd taught me to be. She tried calling. I declined. She sent another text saying Reed's parents had now heard about the loan situation and were even more horrified. That they were saying maybe Reed should reconsider whether this marriage was worth the drama. That I was destroying her marriage and her parents' financial security. I told her actions have consequences and maybe she should have thought about that before calling me pathetic. Thursday afternoon, my dad tried again. Left another voicemail. This one wasn't crying. It was angry. He said I was being cruel and unreasonable. That the loan had been a favor they'd asked and I'd agreed to help. That calling it in like this was petty and vindictive. That if I went through with this, it would permanently destroy our relationship. I actually laughed when I heard that part, like we had a relationship worth destroying. But then he said something that made me realize how desperate they were getting. He said they'd talked to a lawyer about the loan. The lawyer had confirmed I was legally within my rights to demand repayment, but had suggested they try to negotiate a payment plan. My dad said they wanted to propose paying me $5,000 now, and the rest over 6 months. I called him back. He answered immediately. Started talking right away about how they could work this out, how we were family and family helped each other. I cut him off. Told him the loan terms were clear. Full repayment in 30 days. No negotiation. He said that was unreasonable and I knew they couldn't do it. I said they should have thought about that before signing a co-sign agreement with terms they didn't read. He tried to guilt me. Said they'd given me everything growing up. Fed me, clothed me, paid for my education. I told him that was the baseline requirement of being a parent, not a favor they could hold over me. He said I was being ungrateful. I asked him if he remembered calling me his worst investment. He got quiet. Then he said he'd apologize for that if I'd dropped the loan demand. I told him an apology didn't erase 34 years of being treated as less than. He said I was holding on to the past and refusing to move forward. I said I was holding them accountable and refusing to pretend anymore. He said I was destroying the family. I told him the family destroyed itself and hung up. Friday, things really fell apart for Jade. Annabelle texted me that morning with an update. Apparently, one of Jade's former MBA colleagues had posted something vague on social media about being careful who you trust professionally and personally. Didn't name names, but everyone in their network knew who it was about. Another colleague had directly cut ties with Jade over a potential business opportunity they'd discussed, and the committee position she'd been hoping for officially went to someone else. But it got worse. Reed's parents had apparently sat him down Thursday night and told him they were seriously concerned about his character and his marriage, that they didn't recognize the person he'd become, that the way he'd talked about me on that recording was unacceptable, and his dismissal of their concerns about it was even worse. Reed had tried to defend himself, and his dad had apparently said that if this was who Reed wanted to be, they were disappointed in the son they'd raised. Jade called me Friday afternoon absolutely hysterical, said her career opportunities were drying up because of me, that people in her professional network were treating her differently, that Reed was pulling away from her because his parents were in his ear constantly, that their marriage was falling apart, that her parents were in financial crisis, that everything was collapsing and it was all my fault. I asked her whose fault it actually was. She said mine for recording them and sending it to everyone. I said no. Whose fault was it that she'd said those things in the first place? She said I was twisting everything. I told her I was just making her face reality. She said she'd apologized and I was refusing to accept it. I said she'd never actually apologized. She just said I was overreacting. She started crying. Said she didn't know what else I wanted from her. I told her I didn't want anything from her. She said there had to be something I wanted or I wouldn't still be doing this. I said I wanted her to understand what she'd done and face consequences for it. She said she did understand and the consequences were too much. I told her they were exactly proportional to years of cruelty. She asked if I was really going to force our parents into financial ruin. I said I was collecting a debt they legally owed me. She said I knew they couldn't pay it. I told her maybe they should ask her for help since she's the successful one they invested so much in. She went quiet. Then she said she and Reed couldn't afford it right now with the new house and everything. I said interesting how that worked out. She tried one more angle. Said if I dropped the loan demand and stopped spreading the recording, she'd convince our parents to go to family therapy with me. That we could work through all of this with a professional. I actually laughed. Told her I wasn't interested in working through anything. She said I had to want some kind of resolution. I said the resolution was them facing consequences. She hung up on me. Saturday, my mom tried a different approach. She showed up at the grocery store I usually go to Saturday mornings. I don't know if she'd been staking it out or if someone told her my schedule, but she was waiting in the parking lot when I pulled up. She approached my car before I could get out. She looked terrible. Eyes red from crying. Hair not styled like she usually kept it. She started talking immediately. Said we needed to discuss the loan situation. That they physically could not come up with $38,000 in 3 weeks without destroying their retirement. That I was forcing them to choose between honoring my demand and having financial security in their old age. I got out of my car and walked toward the store entrance. She followed, kept talking about how this was too much and I knew it. How I was being cruel in a way they'd never been. How they'd made mistakes, but nothing that justified financial ruin. I stopped walking and looked at her. Asked her if she thought refusing me $300 while giving Jade $15,000 was a mistake or a choice. She said that was different because Jade needed it for a house down payment. I asked her if she thought I hadn't needed it when I asked. She said everyone goes through tough times financially. I asked her how many tough times Jade had gone through where they refused to help. She couldn't answer that. I told her the loan would be paid in full in 3 weeks or I'd file to collect. She grabbed my arm, actually grabbed it and said she was begging me not to do this. That they were sorry for everything. That they'd do better. That I couldn't destroy them like this. I pulled my arm away and told her begging didn't look good on her. She started crying harder. I walked into the store and left her in the parking lot. That afternoon, Uncle Jet called me. He tried to act like we were buddies. Said he'd heard about the family drama and wanted to check in on me. I asked him if he remembered the joke he'd made about me dreaming they'd leave me something in the will. He laughed nervously and said that was just joking around. I told him it wasn't funny then, and it wasn't funny now. He said I needed to lighten up and stop being so sensitive. I asked him if he was calling to actually apologize or to try to guilt me into dropping the loan demand. He said he was calling because family needed to stick together. I told him he should have thought about that before joining in on mocking me. He said everyone talks about their relatives sometimes, and I was acting like they'd committed some terrible crime. I said they'd spent years making me feel worthless, and now they were facing consequences. He said consequences were supposed to teach lessons, not destroy people. I told him they were learning the lesson that I wasn't their punching bag anymore. He said I was being dramatic. I hung up on him. Sunday evening, everything came to a head. Jade, Reed, and my parents showed up at my apartment building at 8 p.m. The building manager called me and said there were 4 people in the lobby demanding to see me. I told him they weren't welcome and to ask them to leave. He said they were refusing and insisting it was urgent. I told him to call the police if they didn't leave voluntarily. I heard him relay that over the phone. Heard my dad's voice in the background saying they just needed 5 minutes. The building manager told them they had to leave now. I stayed on the phone listening. My mom was crying. Jade was trying to reason with the building manager. Reed was saying something about family emergency. My dad kept repeating that they just needed to talk to me. The building manager told them they had 2 options. Leave now or he'd call the police for trespassing. They left, but they didn't go far. Connor texted me around 10 p.m. that there were people outside the building. I looked out my window and saw all 4 of them on the sidewalk. They were looking up at my windows. My dad was trying to call me again. Jade was typing on her phone, probably sending me messages I wasn't reading. My mom was still crying. Reed kept looking around like he was uncomfortable being there. They stayed for an hour, just standing there. I watched them from my window and felt absolutely nothing. No guilt, no sympathy, just satisfaction that they were finally feeling powerless, the way they'd made me feel for years. They left around 11. I went to bed, slept perfectly fine. Monday, the loan payment was due. They didn't pay it. That officially put them in breach of the agreement. I started the paperwork to file for collection. Tuesday morning at 3 a.m., my building's door buzzer went off. Then again, then again. Someone was pressing it continuously. I checked my phone and had dozens of missed calls from all of them. I looked at my security camera app that shows the building entrance, and there they were, all four of them, in the middle of the night, pressing the buzzer. My dad was shouting into the intercom, "Please, we know it was you. We're your family. Fix this." My mom was sobbing. Jade was yelling something about how I had to stop. Reed was pulling at my dad's arm, trying to get him to calm down. But they kept buzzing, kept shouting, kept demanding I fix what they'd broken. I sat on my couch and watched them on my phone screen, watched them beg, watched them break down, watched them finally understand what desperation felt like. The building manager called me, asked if he should call the police. I told him yes. They left before the police arrived, but the damage was done. My neighbors had seen them, had heard them. Several people texted me asking if I was okay. I told them I was fine and apologized for the disruption. I sent an email to my parents' lawyer that morning with video footage from my building's security camera, proof that they'd harassed me at my residence, proof that they'd trespassed after being warned. I CC'd my own lawyer that I'd been consulting with about the loan collection. Wednesday, I got a text from my dad. Just one sentence. "What do you want from us?" I texted back. "I want you to understand what you did." He wrote back, "We understand. We're sorry. It wasn't good enough." I didn't respond. Thursday, their lawyer contacted mine about settling the loan. They were offering $20,000 immediately and the rest in 3 monthly payments. My lawyer asked what I wanted to do. I thought about it for maybe 10 seconds. Told him full amount, no payment plans. Their lawyer tried to negotiate. Mine held firm. Friday afternoon, I got notification that $38,000 had been deposited into my account. They'd paid it. All of it. Which meant they'd liquidated something significant or borrowed from someone else or destroyed their savings. I didn't care which. I had the money. I had the satisfaction. I had them exactly where I'd planned to have them for the past 6 months. Jade sent me one final message Saturday. "You got what you wanted. We're destroyed. Are you happy now?" I read it and smiled. Typed back one word. Yes. Blocked her number. Blocked all of their numbers. Changed my door code. Updated my building security to flag them as unwelcome visitors. Sunday, Aunt Milana called. Asked how I was doing. I told her I was good. She said she'd heard they paid the loan. Asked if I felt better now that it was over. I told her it wasn't about feeling better. It was about them finally facing consequences. She said she understood, but asked what I was going to do now. I said live my life without them in it. She said she supported whatever I decided, but wanted me to know she was there if I ever needed family. I thanked her. Told her she was one of the good ones. She said she was just being a decent human being, which apparently was a high bar in our family. I haven't heard from my parents, Jade, or Reed in 2 weeks. The family group chat I'd muted months ago got deleted. My mom's sister mentioned in passing that my parents weren't attending Thanksgiving this year, that they'd said they needed time to work through some things. My career is fine. My life is fine. I got exactly what I wanted. They spent years making me feel worthless and mocking me for wanting basic respect and family support. Now they've lost their social standing, their family relationships, their financial security, and their golden child's marriage is falling apart. And I sleep just fine at night. For everyone who's been following this, I know some of you think I went too far, but I want you to understand something. This wasn't about one recording or one loan. This was about 34 years of being treated as less than, of watching them celebrate Jade while dismissing me, of hearing my own mother call me a loser, of being told I wasn't worth $300 to help, but I was worth using for free labor. I gave them every opportunity to treat me with basic human respect. They chose cruelty instead, so I chose consequences. And I don't regret a single second of it. They wanted to know what it felt like to be desperate and powerless. Now they know. They wanted to treat me like their worst investment. Now they understand what a bad investment actually costs. They thought I'd keep taking their scraps and begging for approval. They were wrong. I'm done being their backup child. I'm done being the family disappointment. I'm done tolerating people who think love and respect are conditional on meeting their arbitrary standards. I recorded them. I exposed them. I collected what they owed me. And I walked away from all of them without looking back. That's not revenge. That's justice. And I earned every bit of it.